And then, I mean, even for the pay-as-you-go products, they're still facing the same challenges, the same access to spares, getting the knowledge, the repair technicians out to where it's actually required, or else getting those systems into larger cities. So, yeah, great new innovations, same problems.
Thank you for that. We're closing out, so we'll have closing remarks. I would like to ask our precious last bit. Is your ethanol really as effective as petrol or diesel? Because that skepticism, the bias, that kind of thinking of will it really work comes into everyone's minds. Please.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about the ethanol. This thing, the CV value is yes low than the normal petrol. This thing, but what we are talking about, the aim is to not to bring down the price of the fuel. We are talking about the upbringing of the farmers from the root base or the entire economy to have a turnaround, or to have, say, like a foreign exchange which is going out. We have to save those foreign exchange. Ultimately, the goal is to develop the country by everybody having a win-win situation, from the farmers, from the vehicles who are using it, or the one who are producing, the tax basis also, and everybody. So if you intend to bring down the fuel value by just adding up the ethanol, that's a wrong concept, according to me. According to me, it should be like it's a self-reliant thing, which the country would be in a longer vision, will be having an effect. Like going down the line 10 years, you will see the people having money in their pockets, and then those monies are being recycled back to the economy. And the farming is such a beautiful thing. And Zambia has been blessed with a cassava drought resistant soil, and the cassava can be grown very easily over here. The people around the entire southern Rhodesia and Rhodesia have been used to cultivate cassava from ages. So it's not a new thing for them also. And like I said, like it's not only the ethanol, it's the CBG also, which contributes a valuation. Then the pellets where the coal, it replaces coal also. Then the CO2 also, when it is generated nowadays, PG drinks companies are importing everything. None other company has been producing locally. We are the first one to produce those things. So we bring new technology. The students from the Copperbelt University will be also benefited. Those subjects which have been learned into the textbooks have been now implemented into this country. New avenues of manufacturing will be open. Employment will be generated. So just don't think a fuel ethanol to be replacing the fuel. No, it's the entire whole ecosystem which can be turned around by just one single product, that's cassava. So I would suggest to have that bringing fuel value down. That's not a concept for our company. It's the upbringing of the people. It's our company's
It's an entire value chain.
Value chain, yes.
Absolutely.
Entire value chain, sir, that way.
Thank you for that. Courtney, please tell us something we don't know about Sunny Money and that last mile grouping who you're targeting.
Okay.
Tough one.
Yes, surprise question. That's fine. Well, I mean, there are hubs. I mean, I think we all know, sort of in the rural areas, there are hubs, and those are the ones that we're trying to work with. We're trying to see, can we do repair in a school? I mean, a school can be a hub, and we actually did some repair days where we had our repair technicians. They went out to the rural areas, and they were really welcomed, and people were really happy to get that service. But left to your own devices, most people will actually try to repair things themselves. And like I said, sometimes they do some really innovative and really great stuff. But then if you go and you're opening it up and you do that, you go and you buy a battery and it lasts 3 days. I mean, I think it's just such a shame. So yeah, I would just say, I think that we owe these people the right to be able to have their products repaired. I mean, the right to repair movement is really big in Europe. There's a lot of legislation which is going through, which is basically bringing down the cost of spare parts and making sure that products meet a certain repairable criteria. And I think that's something that we should really push at least the off-grid solar sector, if not the entire, all manufacturers to do.
No, thanks for that. I'll pop an interesting question to Alan. Which is that I remember we talked about the barriers to growth of SMEs being this change in the tax structure at 800,000 kwacha. And then if beyond that, you're coming into competition with large corporates straight away. So, I mean, we probably need 2 more tiers of companies. One is companies that are committed to circular value chains like this one, or to have their own tax bracket. and also SMEs so that we're ready to take advantage of foreign direct investment into Zambia. Otherwise, it just takes off, it arrives and goes. What can you do through ZAM to lobby for that kind of change?
All right. So with when it comes to tax, I think one of the most interesting issues that we've had to deal with this year is at the start of the year when we woke up to a different, a whole new different tax regime as compared to what was in the 2025 budget. So it's things like that where on one end you have advocacy around taxes, but then there's inconsistencies with how it's done. So with ZAM, what we normally do encourage is to have most of our members, especially in this period. We were recently just finalizing our submissions for the budgets, and some of the key issues that we raised there, without preempting, because we do have an event for that, is issues around the alignment of things such as the turnover tax versus corporate income tax, which is something that you're speaking about, because once a company does graduate from the 800 threshold and above, then they begin to pay the corporate income tax and all that. So to spur growth of the manufacturing sector and sectors around, yes, definitely this is something that would work, because that tiered approach then looks at not necessarily implementing a tax regime that's a one-size-fits-all, but allows for smaller companies, in between companies, and those that have the capacity to be able to jostle between one bracket to the next to be able to do that. So definitely with the work that we do as ZAM, we try to ensure that policy aligns with the practicalities on the ground and not just what we have on paper, because yes, on one end would be seated in the office doing our economics, our models, running all those models, but in practice, how is a small business being affected? Because one thing again that we have to remember is from the gentleman that spoke to their registration. They're talking about how many certificates do they have to get as a startup. That's a challenge in itself. It's a barrier to entry. So you're looking at how we can alleviate some of those pressures, and that's some of the policy lobbying and advocacy that ZAM has been trying to do. So if you're not a member of ZAM, look us up and possibly see what opportunities are there, because I think a united voice from the manufacturing sector allows for more impactful change to be made within the tax regime. Yeah.
Greg, over to you. I mean, Avencion helps prepare companies to meet investors and to be ready, as you said. How can they reach you? What is your timetable? How do you deliver the services?
Sure. So maybe some context is important, which is 20 years ago, I left Deloitte Consulting in the United States. I had worked there 8 years, and I started my first IT company here in Zambia, and I failed. And after going through the pain, we figured out what we were actually really good at, which is helping other companies expand, grow into markets, solve problems, improve their technology, improve their operations. So now that's how Avencion became a company, was based on my failure as an entrepreneur, and I saw what is needed in the market is actually support systems. So Avencion does that through accelerator programs. Like I said, we have one that's Pan-African in partnership with Harvard University that pairs them with mentors, industry experts, partners, and investors. We just had our first cohort last year. We do one here in Zambia specifically, that Yaka was a member of last year, which had about 90 SMEs, providing them mentorship, coaching, access to finance, access to investability. We work with them on we have something called the SME Clinic, which they come in and do one-on-ones to get technical assistance to get their pitch right, but also just getting their back office set up. And then I became an angel investor about 4 years ago, and I realized the pain of of companies, and as an investor, watching these companies go through trauma, and they maybe have strong founders and a great product, but then their financial management, their corporate governance, their compliance, their statutory was a train wreck, and that would ruin their company. And so I grouped up with some other investors and some other professionals, and we started a company called Blackstone Africa, which actually provides those back office services in a shared office service model, where now they pay a fraction of what they would normally pay if they were doing it themselves. And that's been really successful with the startups we've been working with, because now they can share all of those services with other startups instead of hiring their own accountant, hiring their own attorney. All that stuff is packaged together. So that's the way we really think that startups can enter the next phase of their growth. And then also really working with them on a regular basis. They're assigned a business analyst to kind of work with them every month on their situation, call it a situation room, and kind of going through their key performance indicators and their OKRs to make sure that they're hitting their targets and to hold them accountable. We joke we're the adults in the room. The founders and the startups are really, so excited, and they're so passionate, but sometimes they're not interested in administration, compliance, corporate governance, but we keep our eyes on that for them.
Super. On to the two recycling teams. You've got to share your contact details so people can direct you to where the mountains of waste are. We see it. We see it. Please share those details now. Any closing remarks you have?
All right. I think in closing, I would say for us, it has been a great journey, and being part of the Avention program really helped us, because at first, remember, I mentioned that we were focusing on developing an incinerator. So that incinerator was meant to replace the landfills, but looking at the traditional mindset, which is in Zambia, we thought doing that would be costly and very much frustrating. So now we are looking at something which is even more valuable now, recycling e-waste, which is a market that has not really been explored in Zambia. And from that, we hope to grow. And I think if you want to get in touch with us, we are on LinkedIn. You can just search for Yaka Investment Limited and get in touch with us. Thank you.
I wanted to talk about, before my closing remarks, I wanted to talk about solar kits. She's in repairing of solar kits, right? We are going to start the project of collecting solar kit scraps. And we are going to work with, I think much of the investment in solar energy in Zambia, it has been sponsored by NEFCO. I'm sure majority of you know about NEFCO. It's
I
the
think they're warning us
Scandinavian,
to those alarms are giving us a red flag.
Scandinavian countries. So we'll be collecting scrap solar kits throughout Zambia. So I think I would like to get in touch with you so that we can work together. Now then, when it comes to e-waste is a good investment, because at the moment, like he said earlier on, he said that 1 ton of e-waste can give you about 300 kg of copper as compared to 1 ton of copper ore. So even the mines, I think if they can go green, they are going to realize a lot of money from e-waste. So we need sponsors that can come on board and help entrepreneurs or startups to grow big, so that we can employ a lot of Zambians who are not employed. And in that way, we are going to make the country green. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Over to our MC.
Thank you so much, Mafipe, for doing an excellent job with the panel, and thank you to the speakers as well. That was very illuminating. A big round of applause for Mafipe and the speakers. All right, please, you're at liberty to take your seats. We are now transitioning into the last session for the day. And I just want to commend all of you for being very committed to this forum. Thank you so much. The last session is looking at a very key topic, which is financing the green and circular economy. So we have talked about how circularity is imperative for sustainability, environmental concerns. We've also talked about the huge economic potential, and I think the last panel also underscored the many economic opportunities that this sector provides. But we know it's also hinged on one key factor, which is finance. And we've already alluded to finance being a constraint. We've already heard about some of the innovative financing initiatives, blended finance. We've heard about a few other ideas in terms of how the structuring can be done. But there's still a lot of constraints because of the perceived risks. Obviously, knowing that many of these projects are very early stage, the return might not be immediate. So this last session is really going to delve into all the nuances related to finance. And we will start with a presentation by, I beg your pardon, I think he's dialing in online, by Matthew Hayden. He will be going into plastic credits. And we'll be looking at how it can be used as a tool to finance the circular plastic economy. Matthew is the managing director of the Recycler Limited. Have we set up? Is he ready to join?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys see my screen already?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you. Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. My name is Matthew Hayden. I was in Zambia recently, earlier in the year, presenting on different ways to improve recycling and help people do recycling. Now I'm just discussing plastic credits with all of you. So to start with that, I'd like to firstly just dive into why this is important in terms of generation, in terms of waste across Zambia and across Africa. Right now, Africans produce the least amount of waste per capita than any other region. So it's less than 200 kilograms per year. But as the population in these countries grow, this is going to increase. And eventually by around 2080, so in about 40 or 50 years, you're going to see that the most waste is actually going to be produced in sub-Saharan Africa. So you can see that orange line. It starts at one of the lowest, and it's going up to the very top. So that means that has to do with urban populations. Of course, the populations across Africa are increasing faster than any other continent. And so sub-Saharan Africa will be the largest waste provider in terms of tons per day. Right now already, though, there are 19 of the biggest dump sites in the world are located in sub-Saharan Africa. So almost half of the biggest dump sites in the world, more than 90% of them are of waste that is generated in Africa is disposed at what we call uncontrolled dump sites. So these are the ones without leakage protection, without lining, and often have open burning. And when you break it down to plastic, 64% of plastic ends up mismanaged or uncollected across sub-Saharan Africa. And you've all seen it. Waste is everywhere. Lots of burning of waste going into the rivers, waste going to the dump sites that aren't done well. And on rating wise, I think Zambia and is ranked as some of the worst on terms of scores of recycling rates, ocean plastic pollutions, and just general household and commercial solid waste control. And we break it down through plastic waste. Globally, only 9% of plastic is recycled. Even in Europe, in Germany, in Sweden, in these locations, you can see that in the OECD countries, the recycling, which is the sort of far right side or the teal side, is not the majority. Mostly it is landfilled, mostly it is incinerated, even in the wealthy countries. Or in Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa, you can see the orange line is the biggest. And that is mismanaged or uncontrolled litter. But a lot of these countries are landfilling and or incinerating with very, very small percentages of recycling. And in Africa, it's even harder because we have, vast land mass. We're not as concentrated urbanly as other locations. Many locations do not have roads. They don't have easy ways to access. People have the lowest ability to pay. There's no at source separation. There's lack of investment. And also poor dump site in manufacture or infrastructure means that vehicles get stuck. Low levels of enforcement and corruption. But these are the materials that are still recycled across Zambia, across Tanzania, across sub-Saharan Africa. So it's mostly hard plastic, PP, PET, and LD. And these are the different items that they're made into. And if you look in the United States, this is a breakdown in the United States. Only 20% of plastic bottles are recycled in the United States. 10% of the hard plastic. But then you can see all the rest of this plastic is not being collected. The PVC, the LDP, only 5%. The PP, less than 1%. So all of these materials are not even being recycled in a developed country. So this is sort of like how do we change this? What kind of emphasis do we need to make a big difference on this? And that's what the plastic credit is coming in for. And to describe this, it's basically the same as a carbon credit. So the way carbon credit works is a company like an oil or gas company, like I think Total or Shell are some of the biggest purchasers of carbon credit in the world. But basically, they produce carbon through their business, and therefore they want to offset that carbon by purchasing carbon credits, which is some sort of scheme that takes in the carbon. So whether it's forests or methane capture, etc. In terms of plastic credits, it's very similar. So there are companies that are producing what we call fast-moving consumer goods. This is like Coca-Cola, Unilever, anyone who makes like lots of different soaps or Procter & Gamble. These companies are producing plastic and putting it in the environment. And in theory, they should be incentivizing how to get that plastic back from the environment. And since we already see very small percentages of plastic are recycled, you need to find, and that's because it's at the market price. So at the current market price, only certain types of plastic make it to a recycling facility or can be recycled. So now this plastic credit is in theory supposed to come in to be an audited process to remove plastic from the environment, to prove that that plastic has been removed from the environment, and so that companies that produce the plastic can then offset against their claim. So there are a few really important ideas in this. The first is what we call additionality, and the second is volumes. So the first thing about it is this word that we use also in carbon credit, it's additionality. So additionality means that it needs to have a value. The plastic credit needs to be valuable in itself. So if, for instance, if there's a company that's already collecting plastic bottles, shredding them, flaking them, those are already being recycled, you're not going to get a plastic credit for that because that's already happening. It already exists. There's no what we call additionality. So you need to have projects that are looking at the plastic that currently has no market or is not being collected. That could mean secondary cities where, instead of Lusaka, you're looking at a further place where there really is no collection. That could be focusing on different types of plastic material that nobody else is recycling or that has, or even if there's a very small percentage of plastic bottles recycling, to increase that. All of that falls under this category of additionality. The other important thing is the volumes. So most companies will not do plastic credits unless there's a certain amount of volumes, and the current volumes that are being done don't count. So if you're doing 100 tons or 50 tons or 20 tons of collection of material on a monthly basis, you're already doing that. So there's no additionality. So the focus must be on these expansions, upcountry operations, different plastic materials, and overall on items currently not being collected. And on volumes, they want to see sort of a proven capacity to collect at least 50 metric tons per month. That's a good volume, with 50 tons being more necessary. So organizations like Alliance to End Plastic Waste, they typically expect more, around 200 metric tons a month. So these are the targets that you're looking for. If you're looking to get a plastic credit, you need to be looking at 50 to 200 tons of metric tons per month, or even more than that if possible. So when it comes to plastic credits, there are basically two different types. There's what we call verified plastic credits. I'm going to go forward, and there's impact plastic credits. And these are different in the sense that one of them is going through this regulation process. So big kind of regulators are Vera, Gold Standard, and ocean-bound plastics. And these are sort of hefty procedures that you need to go through in order to follow methodologies in order for you to become a full verified plastic credit project. And lots of companies sort of work through these standards. So for instance, South Pole, you can work with South Pole, and South Pole will help you to get registered with Vera. Maybe they do the initial, they pay for some of the certification fees because it's around $15,000. And they assist on that process with the idea that they would then purchase the plastic credits once they're registered through these platforms. So on the left you have the Vera, Gold Standard, Ocean Bounce. These are sort of verified registered bodies. And on the right you have companies like Repurpose, like Plastic Credit Exchange, like Ton to Ton, that might assist in the process of registration and are looking for new projects to do plastic credits through. And a lot of these companies started with doing carbon credits, and so now they've moved into plastic credits as a new area. So there is a large verification process when you go through these, but the revenue potential is higher than it is on impact plastics. For instance, in theory, you can get as much as 150 tons for collection. So even if you go and you're collecting plastic from the environment that would otherwise have been dumped or burned or ended up in the ocean, and you're not even recycling it, you're just putting that in a certified landfill or working for waste to fuel, that's $150 per ton that you can get on addition to the other process for collection, and then 150 euros per ton for recycling. So that means that you also do the full recycling process, which can end up to be around 300 euros per ton that you can get for the full process. This varies, of course, on project to project, but these are some indicative rates for you to understand. When it comes to recycling, it's actually not specified in the Vera and the Gold Standard what you need to see when it comes to recycling. In some cases, this could mean baling and shredding, but you need to then know exactly where your final product is going. It needs to be fully verified, the whole chain of it. And of course, it's easier if you're recycling directly yourself into that pellets. So that's verified plastic credits, and those are some of the companies that you could connect with to try and work out that. So this is basically how it works: is there's a local government waste operator. They get a deal with someone like Stop Waste Go Circular. They open an account with Vera. They then certify the plastic credits. They sell them to a plastic buyer, and then that money goes back to the company Stop Waste in this case. So those are that's kind of how it all works, and they can use that money to obviously fund assets. There have been projects in previously where you were able to get funding for the new waste assets and infrastructure as part of the project, but most people would prefer to have to basically have the funding go through you have to fund for the waste assets, but this helps you in your business. And then there are companies that do what we call impact plastic credit projects. So there are a lot of these around and more every day. And these people, instead of going through the Vera or the Gold Standard certified systems, they look to certify their own systems. So basically they're saying, we built an app, or we built some sort of form that tells us exactly how, it proves that those plastics were in the environment and they've been removed from the environment. So that isn't like, you don't have to go through the same registration fees as Vera or Gold Standard, because they kind of register you yourself, and they have multiple steps on the app to prove the process. So these are not as valuable as the verified because they're not verified, but they are verified by their own systems. And so there's still people who are looking for these specific projects. All of it is voluntary currently, so it doesn't actually matter in terms of if it's verified. Eventually it will, But now even the, impact ones, people who buy impact plastic credits are also, it's a voluntary basis. So some of these can even be supported by the big companies like Nestle or Unilever or SC Johnson as part of their Go Circular is specifically by Holcim. So there are different projects that work for that. And the price range can be very, very high. Sometimes they even have a price for specific ocean-bound plastics, but anywhere between 50 euros to 30 euros per ton. This is an easier onboarding. There are fewer costs and the documentation is simpler. You don't go through this full methodology that you do, and you can kind of get started earlier. And this is what I have an impact plastic credit for my company in Tanzania. So just to give you what that is, so what we do in Tanzania, we already do recycling of lots of different materials. We do zero waste to landfill. We recycle plastic bottles, hard plastic, PP, LD, even some PVC. But what we didn't do, and we saw that there was no market for, was what we call non-recyclable plastics. So this is essentially multi-layered material that doesn't have a market, that isn't recyclable in Tanzania. So a chip packet, which has a little bit of plastic on the outside, a little bit of aluminum foil on the inside, most of the things like a Snickers bar, all of those different things that you, like even the label on a plastic bottle, all these different materials that don't have really a recyclable market and were never really meant to be recycled in the first place. So we work with Clean Hub. Clean Hub pays us basically 118 euros per ton for us to collect material, to shred the material, and also to send that material to a local cement company. The cement company is then using that as waste to fuel. The whole project is audited every step of the way. When we collect any plastic, we take pictures of it scaled. We take pictures of it when it's shredded, and then it goes to a weigh bridge. And so that's uploaded, and then it goes into the cement kiln. And we have to prove that all of these processes have been in place in order for us to get the plastic credit. But what has been really nice is Clean Hub has helped with some of the upfront financing for and a couple shredders to help the process. Right now we're doing between 70 and 90 tons of non-recyclable plastic a month. But you can see that this project has additionality. No one was taking this material before. It's removing it completely from the environment, not through recycling, but through waste to fuel. That's it.
Matthew, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into any Q&A. Please bear with us, but I'll quickly call on Ernest Mwamba, who is the team lead at Green Tech for Circular Economy Fund at Self-Help Africa. And he will take us through the fund and how it is fostering sustainable and inclusive economic growth in Zambia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. It's not necessarily the fund, but rather a project. So the project itself is Green Enterprises engaging in new technology for a circular economy in Zambia. So it's a Green Tech for CE project. The project itself is managed by Self-Help Africa in partnership with Tandem Circular, Imani Development, and Prospero. So each one of these partners plays a particular role. However, in terms of the fund itself, the fund is managed by Self-Help Africa. So the project itself is funded by the European Union through the Global Gateway. Okay, that is total budget is 22.7 million. Essentially is to move or transition enterprises, which could be startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises that are actually owned largely by women and youth through the green, circular, or digital economy, and also inclusive of critical minerals area. Okay. In terms of the target, over the life of a project, we are supposed to support at least 5,500 startups and micro, small, and medium enterprises, enhance market access to another 330, also provide grants and technical assistance to business development service providers and financial service providers, and also support the same MSMEs and startups with technical assistance and also grants. Then we over the life of the project, we should be able to create at least an additional 2,000 jobs. I think I heard a lot that was being spoken about here by Yaka, that they can create jobs. So I guess we're in the right place. And then still maintain an existing number of jobs that are existing within there. You know what happens when you also apply technology to processes? You also decrease employment. But we'll try and do as much as possible to limit that risk. In terms of inclusivity, we are targeting 50% women, and 75% of the beneficiaries should actually be youth. I'll leave the rest of the math for you to decide whether you're part of the target group. Okay. Then through smart partnerships with financial institutions, we are also supposed to catalyze an additional 20 million euros in terms of additional investment. Okay. This is where probably if you're applying for a grant and the grant requires a match contribution, you go and actually get a loan, we need to account for that. Or if we get financial institutions and support them for them to really transition financial products to actually target green, circular, and digital economy, then we can also account for all of that investment as well. So just rush through. I will not go through that because I've been told we have run out of time. So the theory of a change here for the project is to really look at the ecosystem that supports a startup, micro, small, medium enterprise. We all know what happens every time you discuss the subject of startups or micro, small, and medium. You always start with lack of market, lack of access to capital. So everything is lack of. So what the project has been, the way the project has been designed is to see how we can actually do a wraparound, okay? Provide you support in terms of investment capital through grants, which are matching grants, and also provide technical assistance in terms of helping you really actualize if you are failing to really transition, or the secular model that you're looking for is not exactly what you're looking at. This is why we have the likes of Tandem to actually assist us in terms of helping those enterprises that we work through, so that they can help you actually find the particular secular model that actually fits what you need to do, and so long as there's a market to support that. Then we are also working with the TVET institutions to see whether we can actually put up curriculum that actually supports the circular economy. You will agree that we are in terms of the ecosystem in Zambia, we do not have much around the circular economy. There's some efforts that when we're doing this, the scoping study, we did find that there were some efforts at UNZA, also some efforts at CBU. But now I think that things are picking up a bit more around this concept. So we'll also see how we can support the development of curriculum in that area. But then to also support startups, the tech-oriented people like Yaka here, we will support the development of fabrication laboratories where you can actually go and actually ideate, innovate, and create your prototypes. Let's just go through a few slides. All right, so I think this discussed that. Let's just move on. So in terms of technical assistance and grants, we are targeting startups and micro enterprises and also small and medium enterprises, okay, including joint ventures with European Union partners. So if you have a business that is partnered with an EU company, you can also participate in this. So for startups and micro enterprises, we're looking at 550 startups. Here, we're really looking to develop your entrepreneurship skills, management skills, digital literacy, also support you with market development, including feasibility studies. And also, we have within there, especially for startups, we have business growth and innovation prizes. These will only be provided through accelerators or incubators. So if you see a business development service provider that would have engaged, which we will be doing as hopefully by end of June, we will start now requesting for applications for startups to actually join these ecosystems in order for you to be curated within there. And then you may stand a possibility of accessing grants. So the ticket sizes that we're looking at, it's anywhere from 2,000 to 25,000 euros. All right. So there's hope for you. Then we're also offering within there some small grants. Okay, there are some small grants that have been put together for you for those small grants, which are anywhere from what we are looking at is anywhere from 25,000 euros or 25,000 plus one to 100,000. These are small grants in terms of the match contribution. We're still at 50-50 for now, but once we get authorization, we will get the communication to all of you in terms of what it will look like. We're looking at a lower match contribution as opposed to what is being offered to the larger companies. So for small and medium grants, we've already gone through two cores. That's core 1 and 2. Core 1, we had quite a low turnout in terms of number of companies that we have. We have currently only 5 that we're actually moving forward to final decision making to see whether we can actually provide these grants. And these grants are anywhere from 100,000 to $1 million. Now, that is normally for a Zambian-owned firm, you can only go up to 500,000 euros. If you have a partnership with a European partner, we can go to $1 million, meaning that if your project is 2 million euros, you can actually come to us seeking the additional million. Okay, so a Zambian-owned firm, the limit is up to 500,000. So your project value probably is 500,000, and or maybe $1 million, and you're looking for 500. So if you're applying for 500 from us, you must match it with another 500 from your end. Either you're going to sweat it from your assets, or you raise it from the market or from investors, or get a loan from a bank to actually cover that. Okay. So with the second core, we are now doing the second evaluation of concept notes, and this time around we have a higher figure. I think we should be going for decision on them to proceed to business plan for something like 22 businesses by the end of the month. So we're quite healthy there. It's possible that there may be some funds left over because the budget for the medium-sized grants is roughly about 8.5 million. Should there be any funds that are left over, we'll seek authority to probably issue another call for medium-sized grants. But that is information we can provide later. Okay. So for small grants, the budget is 2.6 million. Here we're looking at ticket sizes anywhere between 25 and 100,000. And we're looking to launch end of June. Okay. Then we'll also be putting out a call within the same month of June for business development service providers, where we'll provide technical support as well and grants for them to be able to run incubation or accelerators and to also strengthen their structures and services. We do understand that this whole area around green, circular, and digital economy is quite new. So we understand that you've been used to actually providing vanilla products to everyone. So there's need for also the business development service provider to be capacitated for them to really understand the business models that actually fall within digital, circular, or green. So that as you provide the services to the SMEs that may be onboarded onto your platform, you're also quite clear in terms of how you're going to provide those services. However, we do also understand, by and large, that most business development service providers that normally do this type of work are Lusaka-based. So these funds are being provided to enable the business development service providers to actually extend their territory beyond just Lusaka, probably go to Copperbelt and Northwestern, following the value chain that the project is based on. The project really is following Lusaka, Copperbelt, and Northwestern. So we're looking in that area. There will be the funds themselves will be provided on a match basis, meaning that you can either find funds within your own enterprise, or you can look for others to actually join you to actually match what we're providing. It differs core by core, and I think the guidelines, once we publish them, will be very clear there. In terms of the value that is there, we have roughly about 1.56 million euros that is available, and we're looking to onboard between 8 to 15 business development service providers. Okay, and this core as well will be coming out pretty soon. Then we're also looking to at least support 2 to 3 financial service providers, really for them to help develop new financial products that actually support the green, circular, and digital economy. Okay, also for them to pilot the same products, and to also find a way of helping, using this as a platform for us to actually mobilize an additional 20 million euros in investment. Then this is what the Fab Lab would look like. So this is where you go to actually go and move the ideas from your head into actual prototypes. All right. So we're in the process now, working with Tandem, moving quite fast to onboard the Fab Foundation and also select probable hosts. So we'll be setting up 2, one in Lusaka and one on the Copperbelt. So if there's an institution that you're aware of that could be a good host, this would be nice to hear from you. So the whole idea is to get an organization that would be really looking to use a lab not just as a Fab Lab, but also to extend it to other things. So if it's a technical college, they could also use it as part of a place where students can actually go and learn from there. But there's some key issues. One, it must be accessible and easy to reach. There's no point of building a Fab Lab that is too far, and then you don't have anybody who's capable of getting there. All right? And then it should be adapted to computer-controlled equipment, that is air handling and power supply. Big enough to welcome at least 20 groups, because there may be schools, even primary schools, secondary schools, that may want to come and learn from there. So you must be able to host a pretty large groups. So this is what we have. So in terms of a timeline, as I said, contracting medium enterprises, launching of business development service core, launch of financial service providers core, launch of small-scale business grants and also prizes, and then commence recruitment of Fab Lab host institution, and then identify innovation programs to support with innovation prizes. We also have some innovation prizes that actually go to financial institutions. So in a nutshell, this is the project in proper. So sorry I had to rush through, but I was given little time. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Ernest. And you will be joining the panel discussion that's coming next. So if there's anything critical that was missed out, please feel free to use that time to go over that. And also just to make everybody be aware that the presentations will be available on the Circular Zambia website next week, I believe. So you're all invited to go there, download, and get more in depth in terms of what has been presented today. So now let's move quickly to, I apologize, it's quite rapid, trying to make up for lost time. We're getting into the last presentation on tools to finance the green growth and circular transition in Zambia, which will be provided by Jeffrey Shedegar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Zambia lead for Impact Capital Africa. Over to you.
So I'll keep it brief. I realize that these are the last things that's standing in between us and drinks. My name is Jeffrey. I'm with Impact Capital Africa. We're passionate about building the impact investing ecosystem in Zambia and helping impactful businesses grow and scale by access growth financing. We do that through technical assistance programs technical assistance programs, as well as through events. On the 3rd and the 4th of June, we have our flagship event, ICA Zambia 2025, which is 2 days about impact investing. It's very exciting. And as an organizer of events, I know how daunting it is. And the fact that the room is still full, I think, is a real testament to the success of today. So I thought, let's give a round of applause to the organizers. This is the first time, which is always scary, but well done, guys. We've been talking about green economy and about circular economy the whole day, so I'll skip through this. As with many innovations and new developments, you require investment to kind of test it, grow it, take some risk, figure it out, etc. And although there is a lot of potential in the green economy and in these innovative models, there's a massive financing gap. So there's not enough funding available to get all of these innovations going and to kind of keep up with the pace of change that we need to achieve the SDGs. And there's a few real reasons that investors, and there's some in the room here, have challenges with when it comes to innovative and circular new models. One is the perceived risk. And so a lot of things that are unknown, untested, are a lot more risky. And so there's a real additional risk, but there's also a perceived risk, because the way, for instance, banks and investors evaluate the risk profile is based on more traditional ways of creating value for businesses and cash flow. Whereas I think one of the gaps that we have today is still like not really valuing sort of the value of circular business models bring to the broader ecosystem, and the cost of sort of not investing in that. And so CO2 offsets and the plastic offsets are ways where we try to do that. But I think there's still a lot of work needed to sort of capture the full value in a business model, because a lot of that, actually, these business models are helping all of us, and so are creating value that they might not even charge for. So there's the higher perceived risk. When you start, often there's like very limited collateral. And so banks, when you want to get a loan, they just ask you, what is your collateral? Do you have a title deed? And so it's very hard to access that funding without that. Then the last one is the low investor understanding. So like I said, this is an evolving sort of ecosystem, and it's very, very new. And so for a lot of investors, it's still not entirely clear, what does circular mean? What does impact investing mean? How do I value this? How do I assess it? What is sort of the future potential? And so there's still a gap. And as a result of all of this, there's a lot of great businesses and great ideas that unfortunately are stuck. So one of the solutions that I wanted to touch on today is blended finance. So what is blended finance? Blended finance is basically a financing mechanism where you use public and philanthropic funds that are not risk that are willing to take a lot of risk, that are not really risk averse, and you combine that in a pool with, for instance, banks and commercial investors. And by blending these two together, you get a mix that is more suited for these untested, relatively unknown new business models. Yeah, so some of the key characteristics of the blended finance is that they'll have a catalytic effect. And so the whole idea is that, for instance, what Green Tech is doing with their grants, they come in with 50% of this of your project funding, which is a grant, which doesn't need to be paid back. So if it fails, there's no risk, or if it doesn't get the cash flows that it projected, there is still like the first half you don't need to pay back. And because of that, you kind of de-risk the whole opportunity, which means now that an investor or the bank might say, look, looking at the cash flows that you can generate with this grant, actually now I can invest. And so this grant catalyzed the investment. Yeah, it's a risk mitigation. So like I said, it uses the concessional capital to reduce the risk. It's flexible. So there's a whole range of things that you can do. There's grant funding, there's guarantees. You can take debt that is more concessional, so lower interest rates, longer tenure, less senior, no collateral. And a lot of it is outcome oriented. So it looks a lot at measuring sort of the social and the environmental impacts next to the financial ones, as Ernest just said. I'll skip through these. These are some examples. I just wanted to illustrate very quickly, based on a real life example, which is a company that I've known for 10 years and that I love. It used to be called Synergy. Now it's Region Organics. And basically what they do, they collect organic waste from the compound. So they have toilets as well as other waste, and they convert that into fertilizers and other sort of high value products. Now, for this to get started, they needed a lot of funding, and blended finance is basically what helped them to grow to scale now. They're winners of the Earthshot Prize, the first Earthshot Prize by, I think it's Prince William. So they're now reached quite a significant scale. But on that journey, they needed like a lot of blended finance. And I thought this was interesting to see, like there's certain different challenges that require different blended financing solutions. So one of the challenges is high capex. So they need to build infrastructure, factories, etc. So for that, they got some grants and concessionary debt that reduced sort of the initial cash burden, as well as the time to repay their loans. The perceived high risk, it was sort of new, and this waste to value model, they were a little bit ahead of the curve. They've been doing it for 12 years. And so there was a lot of philanthropic capital and first loss guarantees that helped de-risk the private and the institutional investors. A lot of these solutions have a longer path to profitability because they need actual behavior change. You know, like with the cooking solutions, etc. If people need to go from charcoal to pellets, if you not just need to sell your product, but you also need to help change the behavior of people, it takes a lot longer to sort of scale that up and roll that out and make it profitable. And so blended finance gave sort of that time and runway to refine the model and build the demand. And then, yeah, it was an unfamiliar business model. It was completely new. And so there was a lot of technical assistance to fine tune basically all of the different aspects of what they do, as well as the behavior change needed. And that helped with sort of the visibility as well as the validation and the investor confidence. And so increasingly, this blended finance is a bit of a buzzword that you'll hear a lot at impact investing conferences, but it is really a new way of figuring out, like, how can we combine getting a financial return for investors with the need to develop new, untested, high impact, and potentially slightly slower scaling solutions. And so increasingly, I think, and this is my last slide, I think there is a role for the banks, but also for big corporates to play in this space. I think especially for big corporates, increasingly, they start to think about how to use their balance sheet to be more catalytic in helping them with their circular economy targets. And so we run a program with Anglo American, and in that program, they're starting to give us small pools of capital to kind of test how can we use that in a catalytic way that helps businesses access more finance, and this is outside of the mining supply chain. And I see that more and more happening, where this, like, ultimately the Unilevers, the big mines, etc., they, like Jet said earlier today, they all care about the circular economy. They all know they need to do more, but they also need all these new technologies and new business models, etc. And so increasingly, they can actually play a role in developing those not by doing it themselves, but by providing sort of blended finance solutions to startups that are playing in that space and developing these solutions. I'll leave it to that because I see it's 5 o'clock. But anyone interested? The 3rd and 4th of June at Ciela Resort. It's an amazing 2 days. You can come to me later if you want more information. And thanks again to the team for a great day.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey, for taking that seat. Allow me to call Ernest as well to join you. And we'll be joined by Mpaso Banda as well, who's a partner at Kukula Capital. And last but not least, Benson Mwileli, who is the Zambia National Coordinator for UNDP Biofin. All right, so we'll be very rapid. I apologize. I know people are exhausted, but just to commend you all, I think as Jeffrey mentioned, you have stayed up to the very end, and we really are grateful for your active participation. All right, so this session, we'll just continue the conversation on how we finance the green and circular transition, and will be moderated by yours truly. All right. So I will start with you, Ernest. I mean, you already talked about the matching grant that you are providing, which really is sort of the blended finance that Jeffrey also alluded to. There's an interesting statistic of how, blended finance or catalytic finance is at $1 can unlock as much as $4 to $8 of other financing. From your experience, I mean, a lot of this is relatively new, as you mentioned, but how exactly can SMEs position themselves to be able to tap into the capital that's needed?
Okay, thank you for that question. With the experience that I have, and also the experience of running green tech, and also looking at applications from SMEs, I think the biggest thing that that SMEs or even startups have to pay attention is reading. I think what we noticed over time is that we do have a poor reading culture, because guidelines may be provided in terms of what you're supposed to do, but then when you're applying for these grants, you fail to actually follow the guidelines, and that is how we always end up with a lot of projects that are actually put out there rejected. Secondly, it's also putting your house to order. If you're running a business, naturally you must be able to keep financial records, because that is the only way that I'll be able to determine how you're actually making money, because you're sweating capital, you're supposed to be actually making money in and out. But then when we ask for financial records, they're not there, they're incomplete, they have not even been tested. Other thing that an SME or startup may need to do is to, I think we heard the presentation that was made by Greg Marchand here from Avention. Take advantage of all of these ecosystem players that are out there. They're there for a reason, to support you, to help you know how to actually overcome the hurdles. So if you avoid going through such curation, or even being supported to actually develop we have Yaka there. This is a testament in terms of a person who was looking to set up something else ended up with a different model, because he worked with people who have looked at his business from another angle. Have you thought about this? What about that? Then you start realizing, I think my business idea is this one. So you move to that. Then also know what financial services or products are available in the market. Not everything is actually provided by banks. I think ICA is one. Jeffrey here has already alluded to that. I mean, you must attend some of these events, because you never know who you meet. Just 2 minutes talking to somebody, you have an idea. Okay, I think these people are not really supporting me, but you may find the one person that you meet will lead you to another thing. I think when I was with the AGS program, I think we took some startups to Slush, and before we went there, we had like 2 days where they were actually being tutored in terms of how to actually put up a slideshow, a slide deck. And the key outcome there was, you're not going to pitch to actually get money. You're going to pitch to actually book the next meeting. So don't go out there harassing somebody because you want money. No, book the second meeting, because that is where, if the person allows you to actually meet them for the second meeting, mean that you've created interest. Okay? So always have that in mind, that the first call you're having with an investor is just to say this, I would like to talk to you at length, because he probably doesn't have time for you. Also create the right networks, okay? Join chambers of commerce, business associations, there are quite a number around there. Be a committed member and actually support the growth of those associations. There are a lot of other associations that also hold webinars, seminars online. You can join those things. You'll learn quite a lot. You pick up a lot from there. And then you also, like we had I've just forgotten his name. He spoke earlier this afternoon, right? He's somebody that I would want to talk to about my business. All right? When he was talking about how mining is going on, the costs and stuff like that. For me, I already put him as somebody I can refer some SMEs to. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So it's things like this. But you will not find that person if you do not attend these events. I think that's where I can end for now.
No, thank you for those insights. I actually love that you touched on tapping into some of the innovations in the ecosystem, because when you mention having financial accounting records, right? Most SMEs will say there's a cost to that. But I think Greg was talking about sharing costs, right, around that. So I think that's a really interesting innovation. I want to move on to Mpaso, because here we're being told the first meeting should not really be about, trying to get financing. And I think startups and SMEs are always trying to perfect this pitch, the elevator pitch, right? So as Kukula Capital, how do you effectively, approach investors so that they are interested and you actually get that second meeting?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we're a fund management and advisory business. And I think these days we play less of the investor role and more of the matchmaker role. So we're often supporting various enterprises or projects that are trying to raise capital. And I think in my mind, there are kind of two sort of sustainability or circular economy type of enterprises. I mean, they're the sort of social enterprises, which have the sort of dual mandate to fulfill these social impact or achieve these social impact goals, whether those are, to hit a total number of new jobs or to mitigate a certain, volume of CO2 emissions, which is fine. But I guess the trade-off that that kind of enterprise makes is they're willing to forego some of the commercial returns. And then, of course, you have a commercial player whose main motivation is to maximize the bottom line. And depending on the kind of organization you are, that informs the kind of investor that you're looking for. I think a lot of the challenges we see sometimes are where you have an enterprise, it's a social enterprise, and they know that the return metrics aren't really what the commercial investors are looking for. And they're banging on the doors mostly of the commercial banks or private credit funds, whose mandate is to maximize returns. So I think, in going out and looking for capital, I think it's good to be cognizant of the kind of enterprise you are. But I mean, broadly speaking, I mean, that's one of the challenges with a lot of circular economy models is that, the profitability might eventually arrive, but oftentimes for a pure play commercial investor, it doesn't make sense for their mandate. I think, where commercial investors are most excited is where there is a clear catalyst for growth in that particular business model. I mean, just for example, I mean, if you're in a market where you know that in a few months, single-use plastics are going to be banned and all retail outlets have to use paper packaging, that's exciting for a commercial investor. There's a clear driver for growth in the sector, and the ecosystem at large can price in the right kind of margins to make it sustainable. Because at the end of the day, if you're talking about commercial investors, I mean, they have a choice to make, given their mandate. If they have two different investment opportunities of equal risk and differing return, they will always choose the project with the greatest return. So I guess that's where blended finance comes in, right? It tries to kind of bridge that gap between the difference in returns in the two projects. If you can bring in some grant funding into the project that isn't as commercially attractive, that does tilt the return metrics in your favor. But yeah, that's basically our view.
Well, you said you're now focused more on the investment side of it, right, as opposed to matchmaking. So as you're evaluating projects, I mean, granted, the return is more long-term, but do you have models that will be looking at the sort of long-term value that will be created? Because as you rightly said, with a lot of these, impact projects where you're taking into consideration the social, environmental elements, the return will not be immediate. So is there an element of maybe patience? Do you factor that in?
Yeah. So I guess the trick there is, which investor is it that has to be patient, right? And as I said, there are certain investors who are willing to be patient. There are development finance institutions, there are NGOs who can provide you that capital and that can be a bit more patient. And you have investors that are less patient, and you kind of have to structure your transaction so that everyone gets out of the project what they want to get. I think to Jeff's point earlier, some of the models that we employ when evaluating projects, are a bit tricky to use when evaluating not just circular economy kind of enterprises, but really businesses in markets like Zambia, where there are a lot of nuances and challenges. And sometimes the risk that people price in is kind of overestimated. So if you use a CAPM approach, it's a way that we try and come up with how much to charge people to provide them finance, and you pull like the modern sort of country risk premium and build that into your capital stack. It gives you completely skewed results in terms of the risk of the underlying project. So I do think some of the finance, and sort of risk evaluation models that we are using are better geared for more developed markets and don't accurately reflect some of the risks, or even exaggerate some of the risks that are inherent. So yeah, a few challenges, but I mean, your lens is always, what metrics do you care about? If you are an impact investor, You want to see the job numbers, the emissions reductions. If you are a commercial investor, you want to maximize the return, and those are metrics you care about.
Yeah, and just to your point on exaggerating the risk, there's an entire agenda to restructure the global financial architecture because a lot of African countries are complaining about how unfair the system has been. But let me move on to Benson, right? So Benson, looking at Biofin's work, which UNDP is leading on, focused on integrating biodiversity into national finance plans. I mean, I think this is quite new for most of us. Can you expand on it? And how does it link into the national budgets and the discussions we're having around mobilizing financing for the circular economy?
Thank you, Wanda. So really, I think it's a similar conversation, whether you're talking about biodiversity or climate change or circularity, they're all related in one way or the other. And the work we do as the Biodiversity Finance Initiative is really around looking to close the financing gap for green finance in general. This is coming from the fact that we recognize that just public financing is not adequate enough. So it's not just public financing, but we look at private financing as well, and any other source of financing that can be put into this challenge that we're trying to combat holistically in terms of environmental issues, including circularity. So a lot of the work we've done, so it focuses on two aspects. One is, can we increase financial flows towards environmentally positive activities? So that's one end. So this speaks to how we can tap into, again, all sources. So from a public perspective, can we look at how we can enhance, for example, the use of environmental fees that can go towards supporting initiatives that government and other stakeholders are involved in related to environmentally positive activities? Or how can we bring in private sector to participate, whether this means incentivizing some of this activity? I think you heard from some of the presentations, there's this perceived risk or lack of capacity and so on and so forth. So how can we incentivize, whether it's through the government or through any other actors, how can we incentivize this activities to help be able to facilitate for increased environmentally positive projects, right? So whether it's from a fiscal perspective and so on and so forth. So those are some of the conversations around the policy side, but also around how can we reduce financial flows that negatively impact on the environment. So that's the other aspect of the conversation, right? So I'll give an example. For example, in Zambia, a lot of financing goes towards some subsidizing activities, let's say in the agricultural sector, which I think is a good thing, given the role that agriculture plays in Zambia. But there's some questions you can ask in terms of, can we do this differently? For example, a lot of that funding goes towards supporting synthetic fertilizers, which have proven negative effects on the environment, right? So is there a way we can transfer or channel some of that financing towards supporting compost or sort of natural-based fertilizers, which then links into the circularity conversation? Is there a way we can help incentivize companies that are involved in that particular activity to be able to help us be able to move away from, the harmful aspects? So those are the aspects that we're looking at. And again, it covers not just public, but how can we also bring in the private sector into the conversation? So I'll probably stop there for now.
I just want to follow up quickly on the Farmer Input Support Program and your suggestion. So would the compost, the more environmentally friendly fertilizer, be cheaper as opposed to a synthetic?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of experts in here who can answer that.
Sorry,
we haven't gotten into, as Biofin, the sort of the nitty-gritty scientific aspects of it. But I would argue, and again, this is the economist in me, if you take the externalities that synthetic fertilizers have in terms of environmental impact, if we factor those in, definitely they're cheaper.
All right, no, thank you for that. Jeffrey, back to you. I mean, you talked about blended finance. What I'd like to get into with you maybe is as Impact Capital Africa, right, focusing on that. We talk about patient capital. Can you give us practical examples? Are really your impact investors truly patient? Usually, what is the financing structure like? What form does it take? And usually, I mean, they're thinking about an exit strategy. If it's, for instance, private equity. So what does it look like in practice? Can you speak to some of the deals that have been done?
There is not one answer because every deal is different. I also think it's important. There is a stigma around sort of, impact investing means you don't make a financial return. I think more and more impact investing and commercial investing starts to move towards each other because like for the commercial investors to raise capital, their capital sources are starting to care more and more about the impact. Pension funds in Europe want to see how do you make sure that my money doesn't have a negative impact on the world, that it doesn't have a negative impact on people. And so although there are like business models that are definitely more focused on the impact and social impact, where you then might sacrifice some financial returns, I think in the next 10, 15 years, the conversation will really shift. And people, for them, knowing what the environmental impact is of any investment is as relevant as your financial returns. And so I think I think that's one stigma that is important to address. The other thing is that I also think the impact investing space is continuously learning what is the role that they can play. And so within the space, there's a whole range from family offices that are only after capital preservation. So they don't charge interest. They can be very patient. They can take like 6 to 10 years to get the money back, but they really care about the impact that they create, to more like DFIs, for instance. When you talk to a development finance institution, you might think like, oh, they care about development, and they do, but they're also very commercial. Any investor raising from DFIs will be able to tell you that it is very similar, the conversation. You just need to also be demonstrating the impact that you can create. And so, so if I look at, for instance, there's a small deal we've done where we brought in catalytic capital at 0%. So it's a repayable grant because the cash flows of the business couldn't afford bank financing. We know that bank financing is, one, quite expensive, and two, is short tenure, so it means that your repayments every month are quite high. And so by bringing in this repayable grant, or this repayable loan without any interest, we could actually halve the cost to the entrepreneur, which all of a sudden made the cash flows viable and helped them to be able to now access this bank loan. And so there are structures there that can really help, but I can't say there's one solution for all. But increasingly, you see a lot of innovation and a lot of blended finance solutions helping businesses also in Zambia.
It's a good way to de-risk. Being the last panel of the day, instead of going through my last round of questions, I'd actually like to open it up to the audience. We'll take a few questions. Again, please be very brief. Introduce yourself. So by show of hands, any questions for our speakers? We are talking about one of the critical elements, financing. Yes, we'll start with the front and then move over there.
Thank you, Angela from GGGI. Thank you for your comments. One of the things I've noticed is that whenever we talk access to finance, we say there's not enough, or it's difficult to get to. But one of the glaring areas that really needs support, particularly in I would say on the continent, but in this case we'll say Zambia, is the quality of the projects. Because you can't get money if your projects are not good enough. That's what it is. So if you have there's not a lot of emphasis and a lot of activities to really support companies to be able to prepare proper good projects that can at least be looked at for potential feasibility support, or even going beyond that to bankability. So, and is that Kukula's job as a matchmaker, or is it your job in terms of the fund? I mean, there's not a lot of being spent on that focus, and actually that's the reason why we don't seem to be able to access finance.
Jeffrey, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I actually agree. We run one of the programs we run with Anglo American. Their conclusion was when we studied it. It's actually not the supply of capital, but it's the matching the capital to projects and businesses that fit their mandate. And what we saw the gap is, like we can't solve for a project that isn't a good project, and then with some help, all of a sudden it becomes a good project. But what we can do is help the entrepreneurs to get, like we call it, investor ready. So how do you present your project? How do you develop your business plan? How do you make sure that your financial model represents your plans and your forecast in your business plan? How do you build in some scenario analysis? And so we run programs for like mostly scale up. So businesses raising from like $500,000 to $5 million, where we provide support around investor readiness and investor matching. And so, yeah, I agree. It's one of the key challenges.
And I believe with the Green Tech Fund, you have embedded issues of business development support services, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll say what we've seen is that we have applicants for grants who are actually working with the likes of Kukula to help develop their proposals. That's what makes them to have a bit more quality. But then when you go to, I think we had some that had also come in before with the others like Pangea and stuff. But when you go to smaller businesses, I think they really bulk at the whole thing out how paying fees to access technical support. I think that's why the program itself has been designed in such a way that we are really going to provide wraparound support. Okay, if you're not ready, do not rush to actually apply for something you do not understand. When we call for applications for anyone that would like to actually join an accelerator or incubator, which may be offered by various players on the market, and you see value in that, go through that, because then you'll have time to actually test your idea in there, and then probably come up with a better approach. Yeah, you have much better chance of really even approaching Kukula or even working with ICA to actually find an investor. We have some businesses right now that are going to working with the ICA to see whether they could actually seek an investment opportunity. Yeah.
All right. Benson, I saw you wanted to add?
Thank you. Yeah, I thought I'd just add, I totally agree, Angela, in terms of the fact that we have a huge, I don't think it's a problem, it's a huge opportunity to support enterprises, but also projects that would be able to access this sort of financing from a technical assistance perspective. So as Biofin, I think that's one of the things that we identified. One of the work streams that we're supporting on is the green bond market development. And there, we also saw this quite early on, that there was a need to support. And with the green bond, you're working with more mature entities, but even then, you know, that gap in terms of technical assistance is still very, very glaring, right? So we, for example, have included a component in that work stream where we're supporting entities. Well, it's a limited number, just 5, but we're supporting entities with the pre-issuance capacity building and so on, so better positioned to access this funding, because it's truly a gap. I think there's another opportunity. I'm sure most of us are aware of the new act that has been enacted, the Green Economy and Climate Change Act. And in there's a provision for the development of a fund to support environmentally positive activities related to climate change and green economy like circularity. And I think that we need to start embedding in these funds, and I think that's something we're working quite closely with the ministry on developing, embedding elements of technical assistance where we prepare, it's a project preparatory facility that's embedded in these funds so that then you support and address that particular challenge that you've highlighted there. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the different partners in the room, the stakeholders as well, for us to have a more detailed conversation about this because it will definitely help unlock funding going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll take the last question. I did see a hand. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. Mine is a comment arising from Mr. Mwamba's call for organizations to join the chamber. I would like to reiterate the call not only to the startups, but also the financiers. The chamber acts as an information center. If we don't know what you're doing, then we cannot communicate what you're doing to our members. So I'm extending this call that please visit us, let's have some discussions and see how best we can collaborate. You've heard the complaints people have here, access to finances, access to markets, but also access to information about where these finances can be sourced from. So until we know as a chamber, we may not be able to guide these startups appropriately. So we call on you to come through. A second comment is on our two innovators. You've heard them lament that there's no policy framework, legislation, and whatever policy issues. Right now, ZEMA is reviewing the EPR regulations, and the licensing mechanism framework is being revised. We are participating as a chamber, but those that are affected are not members of the chamber. Yet they're the ones who are supposed to make submissions through the chamber so that whatever they intend to see in that law is submitted through us. So I still call on them, extending the invitation, come to the chamber and be part of us. There's no business too small for the chamber. There's no business too large for the chamber. We collaborate very well with Mr. Mwamba's team here, and we're working partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I believe that call has been heard. And given that that was a comment, just allow me to squeeze in the last hand that I saw here. If that's a question, please go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, I was contributing to the answers that were being provided on access to finance and the poor quality projects being provided. So I'm talking from my experience at different USAID projects like EDGE, Zambia agribusiness trade programs on access to finance. So I've got lots of experience in this area. So I think one of the factors that has been mentioned is on the poor quality projects and the presentation of the projects, quite right. But then there's also another overriding factor, which is the mindset change that we need. Because what's happening right now is that SMEs are used to the donors financing their project plans. So you get a BDS provider, and basically you pay that consultancy fee, then they get the finance. But you can't do this in perpetuity. At which point are you going to win them off? Because it's not really sustainable anyway. I mean, you saw what happened with USAID. All that funding was cut. If we have another tsunami in the next 3 years, it means these SMEs, so long they don't have a mindset change, we'll still have this problem. So I think what we need is, as a condition for, I mean, it's good, it has to be a process for the donors, as you provide that support, you inculcate mindset change in them that you need to be able to pay for this service in future. I know, for example, you give them funding for 50,000 euro, then they need to expand later, they need 250,000 euro. Then you still need to do the business plan for them. I mean, they're making some money, let them get that service from a business provider. It's because we get so used to getting handouts. So long that mindset change doesn't change, we'll be giving these handouts forever. I mean, at some point, you need a balance anyway. Thanks.
No, thank you so much. Pastor, do you want to react maybe to that, issues of being weaned off? Do we see businesses actually growing? Even in my heydays as a researcher, you go to the corporate belt, longevity, but really no growth. So any comments on that?
Yeah. I think being one of the people who's involved in providing that support, helping people build financial models, you guys have to start paying our fees. It's true. For one reason or another, a lot of businesses in Zambia have just gotten used to having, donors pay for just about everything. They need a business plan, they need a model, they need a feasibility study, and it has to be 100% funded by an external party. I mean, we do advice, corporate finance advice, project development advice on a commercial basis. And even then, it's difficult. Best case, you agree to work at risk. So you might get a small part of your fee paid up front, and the rest is on successful fundraising. So yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. But I think the dynamics are starting to change a bit. I think you see that reflected as well in the new kind of market support programs that are coming live. There's that cost sharing component, which in some projects historically has not been the case. And increasingly the cost sharing, is shifting away from the development funder and more to the enterprise. So yeah, I mean, culturally, we've seen it in the market as well, but it is changing. And yeah.
So just a quick follow-up. I mean, yes, it's cultural, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it embedded in realities? If you are a startup and you don't have any assets, you can't collateralize any of them. How do you get the seed capital that you need to actually, prepare yourself? Project preparation facilities we're talking about.
Yeah. Fair. There are cases where the reality is you can't afford to pay. But, as an advisor, it's not my job to find you the money for you to pay. You need to come up with that money to pay. And, as an advisor, your role is to take a project or enterprise that is promising and present it in the best possible light. I think sometimes the expectation is, I think Benson might have touched on this, is that you bring something that's half baked and expect us to make it gorgeous. It has to have some reality, it needs to be connected to reality. It must have, a pathway to scale. So yeah, I think there are some businesses that do struggle, but I mean, if I speak from my own experience, I mean, there are even large corporates you'd approach, with the most minimal of fees, and you get surprised. They have a huge office building with a neon sign and Hilux after Hilux at the front, and they still don't pay. So yeah, I think that dynamic will change at some point.
All right, the harsh reality. All right, please join me in giving the speakers a round of applause. I think they've been very fantastic. A wonderful way to close off the day. You may take your seats. Thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to invite Andrew to come to the podium and just take us through a recap of what has been discussed today and then the call to action. And then I will call upon Lana Zutelja, if I pronounced it correctly. Close. All right. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you. Wow, what a day. I think someone just made the comments at how full the room is. I mean, I was surprised to see how full it was in the morning. I think we were expecting 100 and we hit maybe 140, 150, so definitely oversubscribed. Thank you for all of your energy and enthusiasm and determination and persevering throughout the day. So just to share a couple of things that I noted from today. Firstly, there's too many Andrews working in circularity. No, but seriously, before getting into it, first, thank you so much to all of the organizers. Thank you to the EU Green Tech Facility for financing this event. Thank you to the committee that spent tireless hours preparing and guiding us in how to make this event the success that it was today. Paula, Christiane, John, Ernest, and the rest of the team. Thank you so much to the organizers. Where's Linda? Linda, can everyone just give a round of applause? So this entire room, which to be honest, I've never really seen it at these kind of conferences before, was Linda's brainchild and vision, and she's done an amazing job here. So thank you, Linda. Thank you also to Drew, who did a lot of the organization around all of the technical side and the admin and that, and Noel. Thank you to Mwanda for guiding us throughout the day. You did a fantastic job. Thank you again to the guys from Alliance Française for the venue, all the service providers, and especially the speakers and panelists who made this, at least for me, a really fascinating day. I learned so much today. And some of those highlights, I think we've learned all how to adopt better, greener, and more circular practices in our daily lives. and in the work that we do and the visions that we have for the future. We got inspired in the morning by some global success stories, and actually I was really also inspired by some of the success stories that we have here in Zambia. We're seeing that the private sector here is innovating and coming up with new viable circular and green solutions with potential to develop local economies that are less impacted by external shocks. Also with the potential to improve efficiency of operations, saving money in a way that's better for people and for the planet. Some examples of this, we spoke about biofertilizers. I think there's a question around that. And actually, there's a Zambian company, Albeda. They're not here today, but they sell a biofertilizer that's half the price of imported fertilizer. I mean, amazing. We heard about the liquid fertilizer from Syria, also amazing stuff you guys are doing. There was a question about Trade Kings earlier. So they're investing $400 million in a PET bottle-to-bottle recycling plant here, first of its kind. Now, some of the stuff we also heard inspiration from there. I would love to see that turned into a bioplastic site where we actually start using plants to make plastic instead of oil. We heard about how ethanol is being made in Zambia, and when I was in Brazil, it was amazing to see every single filling station you can buy ethanol, and it's 60% the cost of petrol. I mean, not the same calorific value and so on, but it's significantly cheaper to fill up your car with a renewable resource, a biofuel. That was really cool to see. We heard also about some of the challenges that the repair and remanufacture space faces in terms of recovering the materials and so on, and how we need the involvement of the entire value chain to really make that work, from the product design all the way to the people who are using it, who are willing to let go of their e-waste. I think things to touch on there around needs to be uniform and swappable. So, for example, there's a Dutch company called Fairphone, where actually, if something's broken, you just take out that piece and replace it. You want to upgrade your camera, you just put in a new camera module. The battery doesn't work, you take it out and you replace that. And these new phones have kind of gone away from that, where everything is locked in and you have to keep using their systems. But actually, this phone I got from an Apple store, and they call it Reloved. So it was someone else's. It's been repaired and refurbished and so on, and ready to go again. And we're also seeing a shift in policy to enable this. So, for example, under some of the EU directives, all devices now have to use a standard charging port, USB-C. So again, a lot to learn from the Europeans on this sort of thing. On the policy side, we heard a bit how government needs to create an enabling environment. And actually, there was a lot of positive feedback about systems that are already in place. Tax incentives. I know, for example, any machinery related to recycling or waste management comes in duty-free into Zambia. There are certain economic zones, multi-facility economic zones, where again you can set up and get tax breaks. And I think, yeah, again, the focus on enabling policy over policing was quite a highlight. In the past year, especially, we've seen a lot of progress in the energy space there. Due to a crisis, load shedding, we've actually seen now the energy market is completely open to private power players. And we've been talking about this since for the last 10 years at least, around solar farms, waste-to-energy facilities, and so on. And it took this crisis really to open the policy to enabling that. We're also seeing emergence of some really good channels to collaborate, and I think one of the key things take away from today as well was the need for collaboration. So really happy to have all you passionate people here in the room. Let's work together. Let's drive this forward. But we're also seeing some platforms to collaborate with governments. The Presidential Delivery Unit, PPP, the Public-Private Partnership Dialogue Forum. There was also a call for advocacy and to start to include some of this in budgets and so on. And that gets us then onto the finance side. We heard a lot of positive news about how money is available out there. But we need to look at business models that are circular and green that could be a bit more risky, and understand, okay, how do we evaluate these? How do we help the financiers to understand and bring in innovative mechanisms, blended finance, and so on? And actually good to see that there's some of this already happening. So from some experience, we worked with a company, and Zanaco, for example, if you have a green business, your interest rate can go down about 8%. Because they have exactly this, they have a facility to support and loan to green projects. But, and I think this is the key but that we always look at, circular businesses need to be viable. And what's the core of a business? A business is something where you're providing value to a customer and the customer is willing to pay for it. So that's always a key thing to look at. There's also some good messages around how you should know your investors and know what they're looking for. But again, getting back to the collaboration, there's a lot of ecosystem players, a lot of people who are enabling in the space. So get out there and talk to them, share what you're doing, and let's work together to make this happen. If you could just quickly go back to the slides. So the last thing I want to touch on is that the Zambia Circular Economy Network is here to support in all of this, and would love to work together with all of you. Can we just bring up, sorry, are the tech guys up there? Can you bring up the slides again, if you can just change from the video feed? So the Zambia Circular Economy Network has created a portal called Circular Zambia. Oh, no, okay, there was meant to be a slide on that. It must have been left out. And basically, this Circular Zambia, the website is circularzambia.org. Many of you would have registered for the event through that, but that is going to be the home for all things green and circular in Zambia. As mentioned already, we'll be sharing all of the videos and slides from this event, but we'd love to hear from all of you how we can share your success stories, share the cases of what's working, and bring all of you together. So please, get in touch with us. Sign up to be a member of the network, and let's make Zambia greener and more circular together. Thank you. I'm going to save Mwanda some time again and invite Lana to come and give closing remarks for the day. Thank you, Lana.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you, everybody. I have, in a way, I think the trickiest role of the day. First, I haven't been able to join throughout the day, so I'm here supposed to give some very, insightful closing remarks. But luckily, I have a solution for that one. And second, you're all, I think, pretty much tired after a very long and intense day. So I'll really try to keep it short and very far away from a formal speech. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lana Jotelia. I work at the EU delegation to Zambia and COMESA. And this amazing team sitting in the front rows is my team working on this specific topic and many, many other topics. And I really want to start by thanking them for doing an amazing job in preparing this event, of course, together with the Green Tech team and all the organizers and everyone. I think I'll just echo everything that Andrew said so perfectly just earlier on in thanking really everybody to in making this event possible. And most of all, thanking all the participants here in the room for your enthusiasm, your energy, and your resilience. I've been receiving real-time feed throughout the day from my colleagues on what is happening in the room and what is being raised as key messages. Why this event is so important for me and why I think I have a solution to this, not really knowing exactly what was discussed in the day, is because I come from a sort of direct or indirect circular economy background. I understand that my head of cooperation mentioned this morning that we are celebrating today 10 years of the first EU Circular Economy Action Plan. Well, guess what? I was there when we were working on it in Brussels. So I feel like 10 years later, I keep sort of closing this loop and coming back onto the circularity. I was very proud to be part of the DG Environment team, so the team in Brussels of the European Commission, working and following the implementation of the first Circular Economy Plan, Action Plan in Europe. And then I moved on to Addis Ababa, African Union, once again working on the African Union Circular Economy Action Plan. Here I am 10 years later in Zambia, working on Zambia, circular economy strategies, action plans possible in the future, and everything linked to circularity. And not to forget, of course, COMESA and the regional context. So very excited to be, continuing on this path. And if you allow me, I'd like to, of course, thank very much the support we received from Zamsen, of course, from Green Tech, leading very much this effort, but also in general, the support and the interest that we are receiving from the government of Zambia in leading these efforts of circularity forward. None of this, of course, is possible without the businesses, without the private sector, and without you present here in the room, also applying to our calls, also wanting to bring this agenda forward. We really want to echo these messages, and I really think is the most important thing that speaks to people, even those who do not quote unquote care particularly about the environment, although I do believe and want to believe that we all do. This is really about saving money and making business, and in the process saving the environment. And this applies also actually for consumers. So it's a question of mind shift, total transition in the way we have been sort of living until now. I don't think it's a very new concept on the African continent as such. I think there is a lot of embedded circularity in the way people live and operate on the continent. But it's really changing this mindset at the level of individuals, at the level of companies, at the level of the government, and accompanying this throughout. What we've done in Europe is really see it as a transition. It does not happen overnight. It takes a lot of hard measures, a lot of soft measures, a lot of financial measures, a lot of front runners. You have quite some front runners on the continent with the African Circular Economy Network, and quite some countries we have very, very forward-looking policies and regulations. I understand you spoke also, of course, about the regulatory environment, the incentives which are needed, promoting these models, not over-regulating, addressing the right needs, listening to the businesses. We've heard some calls from the chamber. Join the chamber, voice your messages through them. I won't dwell into the financial challenges and opportunities. I think we heard a lot about it in the last panel. But I also want to highlight that circular economy really does apply to all sectors. I mean, we know that specifically for Zambia, we have the critical raw materials, which are really the sort of highlight and the key driver of the economy. We have, of course, agriculture, circularity in agriculture, very, very important. We have overall the mining, we have the textile, we have the biogas, you name it. You can really apply it to any sector which is out there. And as I mentioned, you really do save a lot of costs. You really do make money out of it. But it's a long-term vision. It's not something which is going to happen tomorrow, the day after, the week after. And I think Ernest also highlighted very much in his intervention, like all the other speakers. I'm trying to make sense out of my notes. If I show you how it looks like, it doesn't really help. But what I also wanted to mention is that innovation, you've heard it throughout the day, is really key. We work a lot on that in the EU. We work a lot on that in our partnerships with our partner countries. Coming back to the critical raw materials and to the mining, to make it very concrete, you can really address the circularity throughout the entire life cycle. It really is a loop that you can close from the moment of extraction and minimizing the waste you have to actually reusing, recycling your materials, promoting all the sort of consumption elements, but then also, of course, design from the onset so that these materials can be recovered, reused, and brought back into the loop and into the actual life cycle of product, extending the life cycle of products. I think nothing new to all of you here in this room. I think Andrew did an amazing job in recapping all the main messages and really giving very, very concrete and tangible examples. I understand there was a lot of interest this morning in all the different examples which were presented. I think this call that you made earlier on access to information is a crucial one. I think the explaining what it is, talking about it, showcasing concrete models from all around the world, from Zambia, from the African continent, from Europe, that's what really makes it tangible. That's what makes people understand that maybe they're already somehow on the path to circularity and then get concrete ideas into how to make it happen. I also understand that in terms of the approaches we have to take, there's of course a lot of challenges. It's not going to happen overnight, but ultimately we are constantly talking about resource efficiency. And we heard colleagues mentioning earlier, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's climate change, whether those are natural disasters and crises which are affecting all of us worldwide. I think the circularity is the one model which actually concretely translates all of these very, very high-level global commitments, the SDGs, all the different continental agendas, the joint targets and common sort of denominator we all have to respond to globally into very concrete, tangible things on the ground. So I think it makes it really worthwhile. It makes it tangible. It makes it attractive for companies and also individuals to embark on. It also focuses on competitiveness. We heard that going linear is not really an option anymore. I mean, it's just not managing to stay on the market anymore in this concept as it used to be. So we really have to shift this whole approach to doing business, to new business models. And I think this was really very, very well discussed through the day. I also wanted to comment on the Zambian potential, on the untapped potential. We heard so many sectors which could actually embed the circularity, starting from the municipal solid waste management to the biogas, to the fertilizers. I mentioned the textiles. We focus also on, of course, on electronics, on the packaging, on the e-waste. I mean, you name it, as I said, you can really cut across all the sectors. I'm trying to see very quickly and very discreetly if I missed any of the major points of my element. Yes, I actually did. What next? So I think we heard a lot on what the EU is doing. I think we've got a lot of experience on the ground. What I can say that also within the EU, we had a number of countries who were very, very much advanced in all the circular economy business models, policies, regulation, and all of that. We had a number of others who were just starting. It nevertheless did not prevent us in engaging into the first action plan, into engaging into the second action plan, and then coming up next year with the Circular Economy Act. So if we are to wait that everyone is on board, we're never going to start. So at one point we have to start, and then the transition will slowly come. And this is what we're actually doing through our EU initiatives here in Zambia, concretely at the national level, but also regionally within the broad context of COMESA. We really want to support the private sector. I think Ernest has made his case. I will not dwell more into that, but also from an angle of skills, of sharing knowledge regionally, of bringing countries together and encouraging them to work on those models together. So concretely for the COMESA region, we have packaging and electronic waste as the core focus of our activities. We really want to accompany also in our future programming, in the future actions we will be funding, the government of Zambia in this sort of policy regulatory framework of the enabling framework for the companies to operate. So we work on one hand with the government, hand in hand, and on the other with the businesses, trying to bring them together. So very happy that we have a new project in the pipeline which will address exactly that and hopefully connect some of the dots of today's discussions. I think I will stop here. I will just very much thank Andrew and Zamsen for the knowledge platform they are creating and really invite all of you to keep on checking circularzambia.org, providing input, feedback, sharing information, spreading the information, and coming back to us, to the Green Tech team, with whatever information, clarification, suggestion, feedback, or positive idea you might have. I really stop here. I could talk forever. I love this topic. I really love it. And I'm very, very happy to have had the chance and the privilege to work on it for the last 10 years and a very different angle, Europe, Africa, continental, regional, and national. And I hope to be on board of it for many, many more years. And once again, big, big thanks to all of you for your really strong interest and resilience throughout the day.
All right. So thank you to everybody for being very good participants. We value your commitment all the way up to the end of the day. Thank you to the organizers for the event, to the European Union for the financial support. We will now have a networking event, a cocktail. Regrettably, it is cash bar, but we still encourage everybody to stick around and engage and network. So once again, thank you to everybody. We have come to the close of the program. All right.